Imagine a place so remote that it's farther from any land than anywhere else on Earth. A place where humanity's greatest engineering marvel is set to meet its fiery end. That's Point Nemo, and in 2030, it's where the International Space Station, a $160 billion testament to human ingenuity, will crash into the ocean in the most ambitious demolition project ever attempted. Why are we saying goodbye to this orbiting masterpiece? And what does its end mean for our future in space? Stick around as we dive into the incredible story of the ISS, from its creation to its final moments, and explore what comes next for humanity's cosmic ambitions. The International Space Station, often hailed as a work of art in the cosmos, is the most expensive and complex structure ever built, costing over $160 billion and spanning an area larger than a football field with its 43 interconnected modules. For more than a quarter century, it's been a beacon of international cooperation, uniting NASA, Russia's Roscosmos, the European Space Agency, Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency in a shared mission to push the boundaries of science and exploration. But by 2030, this iconic station, orbiting 420 kilometers above Earth at 28,000 kilometers per hour, will be guided to its destruction at Point Nemo, the planet's most isolated spot. This is the story of how the ISS came to be, the challenges it faces, and why we must let it go, starting with its remarkable origins and the engineering feats that made it possible. That's the reality of the ISS, a marvel that Nicole Stott, an astronaut who lived on it in 2009 and 2011, calls a work of art. She's not wrong. The ISS wasn't built on Earth and shipped to space. It was pieced together in orbit, module by module, using robotic arms, spacewalks, and the kind of precision engineering that makes your head spin. Each piece, some as big as a bus, had to be launched into space, often tucked into the cargo bay of a space shuttle, and then bolted together by astronauts floating in the vacuum of space. It's like assembling a giant Lego set, except the pieces are worth billions, and a single mistake could spell disaster. The ISS's story begins not with its launch, but with the dreams and failures of earlier space stations, which set the stage for this unprecedented project. Back in 1971, the Soviet Union kicked things off with Salyut 1, the world's first space station. It was a groundbreaking moment, but a short-lived one. Salyut 1 lasted just 175 days, and tragedy struck when the Soyuz 11 capsule, carrying 3 cosmonauts, depressurized during re-entry, killing everyone on board. The station was allowed to burn up in the atmosphere, a somber end to a bold experiment. Over the next 16 years, 8 more space stations followed, including NASA's Skylab in 1973, each one a little bigger, a little bolder. These early stations were single, solid units, not the modular designs we'd see later. They were like prototype houses, functional but limited, teaching us how to live in space while revealing just how hard it is to stay there. The game changed in 1986 with the Soviet Union's Mir, the first truly modular space station. Mir wasn't launched all at once. It was built in stages over a decade, with new modules added to expand its capabilities. This was a huge leap, showing that space stations could grow and evolve, much like a city expanding over time. The US took notice and started planning its own modular station, called Freedom, in the 1980s. But Freedom faced a problem that's all too familiar: money. Budget cuts and political debates gutted the project, and it was scrapped before it could even get off the ground. By 1993, the Cold War was over, and Russia was struggling to keep Mir operational. That's when something extraordinary happened. Instead of continuing as rivals, the US and Russia decided to team up. They combined their expertise, their resources, and their dreams to create the International Space Station. It wasn't just a US-Russia project, though. The European Space Agency, Japan, and Canada joined in, turning the ISS into a global endeavor. This wasn't just about science. It was about proving that humanity could work together, even in the most hostile environment imaginable. The result? A station unlike anything that came before. a sprawling network of modules that's been home to astronauts from around the world for over 2 decades. Construction of the ISS began in 1998 with the launch of Zarya, a Russian module whose name means sunrise. Built in Moscow at the Khrunichev State Research and Production Space Center, Zarya was a beast of engineering. Made of rolled aluminum with steel reinforcements, it was wrapped in ceramic insulation and Kevlar armor to shield it from micrometeorites, tiny space rocks that can punch holes in anything they hit. Zarya had 2 solar arrays powering 6 nickel-cadmium batteries, churning out 3 kilowatts of electricity, about what your kitchen oven uses. It also had 36 steering jets and 2 engines to keep it stable and adjust its orbit. Why was Zarya shaped like a cylinder? It's the same reason a soda can is round. A cylinder uses less material to enclose a space, making it lightweight yet strong enough to handle the pressure differences between the vacuum of space and the pressurized interior. Plus, it fit perfectly into the Space Shuttle's cargo bay, which ferried most of the ISS's components to orbit. A month later, in December 1998, the U.S. added Unity, also known as Node 1. Unity was the first living and working space, a bridge connecting the Russian and American segments. But here's where things got tricky. The US and Russia had developed different docking systems. The US used the common berthing mechanism, a system of interlocking rings and motorized bolts that create a tight, airtight seal. Russia's androgynous peripheral attach system was more versatile, with identical rings that could act as either the active or passive side. These systems didn't play nice together, so engineers created pressurized mating adapters, or PMAs, to act as a translator between the two. 3 PMAs were installed, ensuring that shuttles and Soyuz spacecraft could dock with the ISS. By July 2000, the Russian Zvezda service module joined the party. Zvezda was a game-changer, providing life support systems, flight controls, and crew quarters. It was the heart of the Russian segment, making the ISS a place where people could live, not just visit. Later that year, the P-6 truss was added, a massive structure housing heat sink panels and solar arrays that boosted the station's power generation. This was the moment the ISS became a permanent home. On November 2, 2000, NASA astronaut Bill Shepard and Russian cosmonauts Yuri Gidzenko and Sergei Krikalev moved in, kicking off an unbroken chain of human presence in space that's lasted to this day. The ISS was starting to take shape, but it was still a work in progress, a skeleton waiting for its full form. Over the next decade, more modules would be added, each one a piece of a puzzle that would make the ISS the most ambitious structure humanity has ever built. But with great ambition comes great risk, and the ISS's environment is nothing short of brutal. That's what we'll explore in the next part of this story, as we dive into the challenges of living in space and why the ISS's days are numbered. By 2011, the International Space Station was a fully realized marvel, a sprawling network of 43 modules orbiting 420 kilometers above Earth, moving at a blistering 28,000 kilometers per hour. It's hard to overstate just how incredible this place is. A floating laboratory where astronauts from around the world live, work, and push the boundaries of what humanity can achieve. But life on the ISS isn't all breathtaking views of Earth and scientific breakthroughs. It's a grueling, high-stakes existence in one of the most hostile environments imaginable. The station faces relentless challenges, from the vacuum of space to microscopic cracks that could spell disaster. These dangers, combined with the sheer impossibility of keeping the ISS in orbit forever, are why we're facing its end in 2030, when it'll be sent crashing into the Pacific Ocean at Point Nemo. Let's dive into what it's really like to live on the ISS, why it can't stay up there, and why we can't just save it for posterity. Life aboard the ISS is nothing short of extraordinary, and not just because you're floating in microgravity, zipping around in 3 dimensions like some kind of space superhero. Nicole Stott, who spent time on the station in 2009 and 2011, describes it as a place where your body behaves differently, where the simplest tasks take on new meaning. Astronauts are busy every day, doing everything from groundbreaking experiments to mundane chores. Think cleaning filters, fixing a broken toilet, or replacing batteries on the solar arrays when they've reached the end of their life. It's like maintaining a high-tech house, except this house is hurtling through space, and a single failure could be catastrophic. The ISS orbits Earth 16 times a day, which means astronauts witness 16 sunrises and sunsets in 24 hours. That's beautiful, sure, but it comes with a brutal reality. Every 45 minutes, the station swings from scorching sunlight at 120 degrees Celsius to the freezing shadow of Earth at minus 150 degrees. That 270-degree temperature shift makes the station's metal structure expand and contract, creaking like an old ship. Stott says you can hear it, feel it, even smell the metallic tang of space. It's a constant reminder that you're in a deadly vacuum, where the line between survival and disaster is razor thin. The ISS's design is as clever as it is complex, built to handle these extremes. It's oriented like a ship, with a port side, a starboard side, and Unity, also called Node 1, acting as the central bridge. Coming off Unity is Tranquility, a node that connects other modules and houses the cupola, a 7-window dome that offers jaw-dropping views of Earth. Those windows have captured some of the most iconic images ever taken, but they're also a reminder of the station's vulnerability. Destiny, the first U.S. laboratory, is attached to Unity's front, while Harmony, another node, connects to the European Columbus Lab and Japan's Kibo module. Kibo even has an exposed facility where experiments are conducted directly in the vacuum of space. Powering it all is the integrated truss structure, a massive framework anchored to Destiny, holding solar panels and radiators that keep the station running. But even with all this ingenuity, the ISS is fighting a losing battle against its environment. One of the biggest threats is atmospheric drag. Even at 420 kilometers, in the upper reaches of the thermosphere, there's enough air to create drag, slowly pulling the ISS back toward Earth. It's not floating, it's flying, and without regular boosts from visiting rockets, it would eventually fall. These reboosts keep the station's altitude between 370 and 460 kilometers, but they're a temporary fix for a permanent problem. Then there's space debris, the cosmic equivalent of dodging bullets. The ISS is wrapped in Kevlar armor to protect against micrometeorites and tiny bits of space junk, some as small as a fleck of paint. The U.S. Department of Defense tracks larger objects, about 10 centimeters or bigger, and the ISS can fire its boosters to dodge them. But smaller debris is unavoidable, and at speeds up to 10 kilometers per second, even a speck can cause serious damage. In 2016, a paint fleck cracked one of the cupola's windows, a 7-millimeter scar that showed just how precarious things are. If the ISS were moved to a higher orbit, say 850 kilometers, the debris problem would get worse. Studies show the station could survive 50 years at its current altitude, but only 3.8 months at 850 kilometers before a catastrophic collision. That's a non-starter for any plan to park it somewhere safe. Temperature swings are another killer. Down on Earth, buildings like the Burj Khalifa deal with heat using reflective glass to manage temperature changes of 10 to 15 degrees. The ISS, with its 270-degree swings every 45 minutes, faces thermal expansion and contraction that stresses its joints and welds. Over time, this fatigue could cause a failure, and with a structure this complex, it's impossible to predict where or when. Perhaps the most alarming issue came in 2019, when a microscopic crack was found in the Zvezda module's transfer tunnel, known as the PRK. At first, Roscosmos, Russia's space agency, said the leak wasn't a big deal, but by November 2024, the air loss had worsened, forcing the crew to close the PRK hatch during normal operations. If they need to access it, they close another hatch between the Russian and U.S. segments to prevent the entire station from depressurizing. This leak is a stark reminder that the ISS is aging, and its infrastructure is starting to fail. These challenges, drag, debris, thermal stress, and leaks, mean the ISS can't stay in orbit forever. But why not save it? Couldn't we preserve the symbol of human achievement instead of smashing it into the ocean? NASA thought about that too. In 2022, they released a transition plan that explored every option. One idea was to disassemble the ISS in space and bring it back to Earth piece by piece. Sounds great, right? Except it's a logistical nightmare. It would take over 160 spacewalks, roughly the total number done in the ISS's entire history. Plus, you'd need a vehicle with a massive cargo bay to protect the modules during re-entry. The Space Shuttle, retired in 2011, was the last vehicle capable of that, and nothing else comes close. What about pushing the ISS into deep space far from Earth? That's a sci-fi dream, but we don't have the technology or resources to make it happen. The fuel and propulsion systems required are beyond our current capabilities. Another option was moving the ISS to a higher orbit, like a cosmic museum. But we've already seen why that's a bad idea. More debris, shorter lifespan, and no rocket to get it there safely. SpaceX's Starship, the most powerful rocket in development, isn't designed to dock with the ISS, and its thrusters could rip the station apart if it tried. Every alternative comes with insurmountable hurdles, leaving NASA with one choice: a controlled deorbit. If we just abandon the ISS, it would eventually fall on its own, potentially landing in a city or suburb. That's not a risk anyone's willing to take. So the plan is to guide it to Point Nemo, the most remote spot in the Pacific, where it'll burn up and sink, far from human life. That's where the story gets even more dramatic, and in the next part, we'll follow the final mission to bring the ISS down and explore what its end means for the future of space exploration. By 2030, this $160 billion masterpiece, orbiting 420 kilometers above Earth, will face its end in a fiery plunge to Point Nemo, the most remote place on the planet. The ISS has been a home, a laboratory, and a symbol of what humanity can achieve when we work together. But its aging structure, battered by space debris, thermal stress, and leaks, can't stay in orbit forever. We've explored why it can't be saved. Too complex to disassemble, too risky to push higher, too impossible to send into deep space. Now it's time to follow the final mission that will bring the ISS down, witness the most ambitious demolition project in history, and look to the future of space exploration. This is the story of the ISS's last moments and the legacy it leaves behind, a legacy that will shape our journey to the stars and our lives here on Earth. The year is 2030, and a specially designed SpaceX Dragon spacecraft is preparing to launch on a mission unlike any other. This isn't the Dragon you're used to, the one that's been ferrying cargo and crew to the ISS since 2012. This version is a beast built for one purpose: to guide the ISS to its destruction. It's equipped with 46 Draco thrusters, small rocket engines that can generate over 40 kilos of force each, compared to the 16 thrusters on a standard Dragon. Its trunk is twice as long, carrying 6 times the fuel, giving it 4 times the power of a typical model. This Dragon is the muscle needed to push the massive ISS out of orbit and ensure it burns up completely, leaving no dangerous debris behind. The mission begins with a Falcon rocket blasting off, carrying the Dragon into space. Just 158 seconds after launch, the main engines shut down, with the rocket traveling 10 times the speed of sound, 80 kilometers above Earth. A few seconds later, the first and second stages separate, and the secondary engine kicks in for a 7-minute burn, propelling the Falcon and Dragon into low Earth orbit. The Dragon's nose cone pops off, revealing its berthing mechanism, and at 9 minutes and 37 seconds, the second stage engines cut off. 35 seconds later, the Dragon detaches, now in an orbit where it can begin fine-tuning its path to rendezvous with the ISS. This isn't a typical mission, though. Since 2026, the ISS has been allowed to slowly deorbit, its altitude dropping from 420 kilometers to around 280 kilometers by the time the Dragon arrives. This gradual descent is carefully planned to set the stage for the final act. The last crew will have already visited, retrieving any critical equipment that can be brought back to Earth: experiments, data, maybe a few sentimental items. When the Dragon docks at the front of the ISS, it's the point of no return. The Draco thrusters will fire in a series of precisely calculated burns, generating enough force to accelerate the ISS's re-entry. The goal is to ensure the station hits the atmosphere at a speed and angle that guarantees total destruction, reducing it to harmless fragments that will sink into the Pacific. Point Nemo, located in the South Pacific Gyre, is the perfect target. Its strong currents keep marine life at bay, and shipping lanes and flight paths are cleared to avoid any risk. As the ISS passes the 120-kilometer mark, it leaves the thermosphere, and the real show begins. Traveling at 29,000 kilometers per hour, the station slams into Earth's thickening atmosphere, which tears it apart like a cosmic shredder. The solar panels and radiators are the first to go, ripped away by the intense friction. Then the modules themselves start to break apart, unable to withstand the forces. Temperatures soar to 4,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt the aluminum modules into molten fragments. What follows is a spectacular fireball, stretching 6,000 kilometers across the sky, as the biggest demolition job in history unfolds. From this massive debris field, only a few small pieces survive the inferno, splashing down into the desolate waters of Point Nemo, where they'll sink into oblivion. It's a dramatic end, but it's the safest way to ensure the ISS doesn't pose a threat to life on Earth. If left to fall on its own, it could crash anywhere, from a bustling city to a quiet suburb. The controlled deorbit is a testament to the same engineering precision that built the ISS in the first place. But as we watch this marvel burn, it's natural to feel a pang of loss. The ISS isn't just a machine, it's a symbol of what we can do when we set aside borders and rivalries. Its 43 modules, from Russia's Zarya to Japan's Kibo, were built by nations that once saw each other as adversaries. Astronauts like Nicole Stott, who lived on the ISS, remind us of its mission: off the Earth for the Earth. Every experiment conducted in its microgravity labs, every system that kept its crew alive, has taught us something. The ISS gave us breakthroughs in water purification, air recycling, and medical research, technologies that are now saving lives in places without clean water or reliable infrastructure. It's been a proving ground for long-term spaceflight, showing us how humans can survive in environments we were never meant to inhabit. Knowledge that'll be crucial when we set our sights on the Moon or Mars. So what comes next? The ISS's end doesn't mean the end of human presence in space, but it does mark a shift. NASA's backing commercial space stations like Starlab and Axiom Station, projects led by private companies rather than global coalitions. These stations are smaller, designed for profit rather than the pure pursuit of science or cooperation. They'll carry on some of the ISS's work, but they lack its scale and spirit. Meanwhile, China's Tiangong space station, operational since 2021, is the largest in orbit after the ISS. It's a capable platform, but it's a national project, not an international one. The era of massive, collaborative stations may be over, replaced by a fragmented landscape of commercial and state-run outposts. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Competition can drive innovation, but it's a far cry from the ISS's vision of unity. Still, the ISS's legacy is undeniable. It showed us that we can build something extraordinary when we work together, that we can survive in the harshest environment imaginable, and that the pursuit of knowledge in space can improve life on Earth. Its lessons will guide future missions, whether it's a lunar base, a Martian colony, or something we haven't even dreamed of yet. As the last fragments of the ISS sink into Point Nemo, they'll join the remnants of other space stations, like Mir and Skylab, in a quiet graveyard beneath the waves. But the ISS's impact won't fade. It's woven into the fabric of our future, a reminder that humanity's greatest achievements come when we reach beyond our limits. So as we say goodbye to this orbiting masterpiece, let's celebrate what it was: a gateway to the stars, a laboratory for progress, and proof that we can do the impossible.